We're in the home of Engr Abdullahi Bukar. I understand that's the short form of Abubakar, right?
That's right.
So thank you so much for having us in your home.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very corporate handshake you just gave me. I suppose your time in the field has cultured you in such a way that you now give that corporate, even when you're well dressed up in your regalia.
That's right.
I suppose
you have to move with the times.
For the benefit of those who will be watching, you may want to explain why you have this special hat on your head.
Well, a lot of people remember my brother, Senator Mustafa Bukar, who used to appear in the Senate like this. But not many people know me because I didn't spend much time in these parts of the country. I spent all my working life either in Lagos or in Warri or in Port Harcourt or in Eket. But in 2008, I was appointed Sarkin kudun of Daura Emirate. And you know what kudun means in Hausa? King of the South, because that's where I spent all my working life up to now, over 50 years. So that's why I'm allowed to wear the turban. I actually wondered if I should put a full turban, but I think I may confuse some people who couldn't recognize me. But at least people have seen me like this in some of the visits and some of the other things that have happened with me in my places of work.
So before we go into the hot topic on this conversation, let's give our audience a bit of a background as to who we are talking to. If you wouldn't mind, just take us through your growing days, growing up days.
Okay. I was born in Daura, in the family of Madawaki Bukar. He is the junior brother of the then Engr of Daura, Abdurrahman. And Abdurrahman is the grandfather of the Muhammad Bashar, who was then the Engr of Daura and was succeeded now by His Royal Highness Umar Farooq, who gave me the title Sarkin kudun. Our father was one of the people who attended the old Kasina College. He was a classmate of Abubakar Tafa Balia and Musa Dagash, who is known very well in the Ministry of Defense and other places. Inua Wada, Abdurrahman Okene, Naman Pateji. So we grew up in a house where education is a serious matter. Our father became the counselor for education for Daura and ran the education department. I was born in 1948. I went to a primary school in Daura, and I went to Government College Zaria, which is more popularly now called Barewa College. I did my ordinary levels, and I was doing the high school certificate. And in 1968, Shell Nigeria Producing has before them been training Nigerians to become engineers, and they offer scholarship to students across the university. So they also offer that now to students right across the country. Before it was largely people from the then Eastern region. Now they offered it round. And myself and a few of my colleagues applied. They have a very serious exam. We went and did it. And the condition is that you must make your HSC certificates minimum C in every subject. So it took about 35 of us, but eventually we were reduced to 24 when the results of the HSC exams for the following year came. So in 1969, I went to the University College Swansea in Wales, in the United Kingdom, where I studied mechanical engineering. And among my classmates are people like Masur Ahmed, who is known now in Angote but previously I was the GED refiner in NNPC and was manager of the Port Harcourt refinery as well as the Kudun refineries. And Professor Ederia, who I think is best known as one of the electoral commissioners during the time of Humphrey Nwosu. I think you know what that means in Nigerian history. And I joined the oil industry, joined Shell in Lagos. Worked for 1 year in 1972 to 70. And then I was transferred to Port Harcourt. And I worked for 3 years in Port Harcourt, 73 to 76. I was transferred to Warri, 1976. I was transferred because in Port Harcourt I was doing quite a bit on gas. And then suddenly in 1976 the federal government wanted an extra generating station, which was to be built at Ogorodi, near Sapele. And Shell was instructed, to put it bluntly, to deliver gas in 2 years. So they looked around and said, well, this man has been doing a lot, go and do this one. So I went and under my late leader, mentor, Dr. Kisito Akpere, I worked on the Sapele gas project. We delivered. Then I was transferred to Lagos then to work on the supply to the Boni LNG gas plant. And that was in 1978. People tend to forget that Boni LNG was supposed to come on stream in 1981. And we actually had fantastic plans how to meet that. Do the upstream supply, and NNOC, which later became NNPC, was to deliver the delivery system to get it there. And around that time was also the time when NNPC took the shares they did in all the oil companies, where they took the majority shares and they became joint venture partners with the original international oil companies that were the owners. So it was a big transition. But that went on. I don't think I need to go into the details. Boni LNG was never built, but I ended up doing the supply projects I was working on. We took 2 of them and built the Oben gas plant to supply gas to a larger, to supply gas to a Jaokuta steel plant. Oben is located in Edo State, and it was the closest. NNPC again built the pipeline already to Jaokuta. And then we were also to supply gas to the larger steel plant, which we organized to do from Ugeli. And we also built the big Utorogu gas plant, which was opened by President Babangida in 1989, which delivered gas to into what was called the Escravos to Lagos pipeline system, which was powering Igbin and all the industries around Lagos. And that was the beginning of what we now said we should build a pipeline to supply the rest of West Africa. And so those facilities really brought out the potentials that Nigeria has to be able to make maximum use of both the oil and gas resources that we have been endowed with. I went back to Warri when Boni LNG didn't take off in 1980-81, as I mentioned. And I had to do quite a bit of work to revive many old producing fields to increase their productive capacity. While I was doing that, an opportunity arose for me to go and work in the Netherlands. There was a difficult project which some people said that people like me who are used to handle it should go. So I was transferred to the Netherlands. Not even the health headquarters in The Hague, but to one of the Shell subsidiary in the Netherlands called Nederland Aardolie Maatschappij,
audience now listening to you, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did that. In what capacity were you operating in these different responsibilities that were shoved at you?
A project engineer on the surface facilities. Shell Petroleum Development Company.
So it was under the Shell Petroleum that you were executing some of these contracts and responsibilities that were, you know, put to you.
That's right.
Okay, good, because we need to have an understanding of the I did this, I did this, I did that, so that we'll understand where you're coming from and where we're going.
That's right.
Yeah, with the conversation. Now, having listened to you talk about, I mean, you mentioned some names that really, really resonates, you know, with the developmental strides Nigeria, you know, had accomplished at that time, and, you know, see where we are today. I'm sure it will bleed some people out. A lot of people who understand the realm at that time and the speed at which we're going, I'm sure it will leave them a bit downcast. Yes. Now, you mentioned Ajokuta Steel. You mentioned the Delta Steel Alaja. You know, those were two major mainstay for us back in the day, and they were up and running and, you know, active, at least to a reasonable extent that it became some kind of calling card, you know, when you talk about economics. And you also mentioned, you know, even the Boni and some other major, you know, facilities that we had back in the day. And most people would ask, what happened?
Well,
what happened? We are asking you this question in your capacity as one who was there at that time. You're very active. You did this, you did this, you did this, you did that. What happened? Where did we lose it? We're on a path of speedy development. And all of a sudden, it's as if the tires went out and then we went into the bush. Please, explain to some of these young people. That's the essence of this program. Conversation with history, with historians, history makers, and those who can contribute to the narrative in such a way that we'll know where we were, where we are, and where we need to be in the future.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, it is very interesting you mentioned that, because, yes, you always feel a twinge of has been for many of the things that I have mentioned that we have seen. I have seen a larger steel when it was booming, how many people it was employing, how Wari was an extremely busy metropolis. If you remember, okay, during his old Sunday tonic, he used to call Wari the junior brother of Lagos. It was based on having Alaja, having the refinery, and having also the oil industry base there that was formed a very strong economic base. And I can tell you, Governor Ibru in 1993 actually started to try to build up something to make it go. The same thing with Boni LNG and the delays that came out. I think largely people didn't understand the importance of these very basic infrastructural moves that should have been done at the earliest opportunity. So it was good to see the beginnings of the revival of the LNG, Boni LNG, if you remember, in 1984. But regrettably, it never took off till somewhere around 1996 and came on stream in 1999 and has been doing very well. Not many people know. 1995, 1996, and so forth. More than half of the platforms that are now in Angola were built in Nigeria, in Wari or in Port Harcourt. Why? Because we have the capacity, we have the contracting capacity, and we have the knowledge and we have the people. A lot of Nigerian welders went and worked on those projects at their inception. But when that investment phase went off, we didn't have a similar one to take them. And many of them went to other parts of the world, to Saudi Arabia, to the Middle East. And you see we are going through waves like that all the time. So you need constant supply of projects and items to do, to keep the level of activity going and to ensure that what you are doing is economical amiss. You have to do scenario planning in whatever you do and know, if I'm starting here, what are the possible consequences of all the things that can happen? If the oil price collapses, what will Nigeria do?
Okay, now let's talk about Shell. I mean, Shell is one name that you can talk about the history of the oil exploration in Nigeria without mentioning Shell, amongst other international organizations, companies who have worked and come here to explore.
Yes.
The question, therefore, will be, I mean, you worked with them, and there was this speculation at some point that Shell was also exploitative, in his approach to doing business with Nigeria in terms of the oil and gas sector. How would you respond to that?
I don't think so. But whatever I say is an answer from someone who is from the inside. I worked for Shell for 34 years. And during that time, I have seen how the company has run. I have seen the intentions. And I tell you, the behavior of Shell and many of the other IOCs are largely dictated by what they see our own government do. We tend to forget that when these things started, every part of the oil industry was actually in private hands. Nigerian government did not interfere. It was only from around 1973, 74 when we found NOC, and then we came in with NNPC and so on and so forth, that we started to now say, okay, we are the ones who are going to run it. So from that moment, they took 60% share of all the OICs, the 6 OICs that were in Nigeria then. But before, from what I know of Shell, Shell was doing all it can to produce, and produce cheaply, and to pay all the relevant taxes, levies, and what have you. And one of the things that tend to be forgotten, which I think up to today is extremely important, is the importance Shell plays on training. And training and giving local people the opportunity to run. For example, I mentioned that I went to university financed by Shell. And I tell you, if you look across the oil industry now, I'll be shocked if you don't find more than 60% of the people in key positions came from these. Regrettably, when Shell left Wari in 1912, all these things stopped. We went back to recruiting from the market like everybody. But we still do scholarship and other support programs.
Did you say 1912?
So we go back, pardon?
Did you say 1912?
No, 2012. Yes, Shell may have done some mistakes somewhere. Some may have been read wrongly. But I don't think there was anything exploitative in what companies do. We tend to forget that every company wants to do what it has told its shareholders. When you have got reserves in oil in any country, whether it is in Nigeria or anywhere, you want to be able to develop it. Development in Nigeria is held back for one reason. The OICs have only 40%. The government has 60%. Look, we need to reinvest in oil production. You can see our oil production going, but you see people see what is on now. But you say, look, what you are seeing today was the results of investment previously. Now you need to keep investing to keep your productive level. And you need to invest even more because as oil fields grow older, they produce less at a higher cost. So you need to be able to develop new reserves fast enough to replace the decline as well as to increase, because our population is always increasing and our need for the money to do the infrastructure we need is always increasing. And not only should we produce oil, but we should start converting our raw materials into products that we can also sell. So we add value to them before we sell. And those have not moved on. And those are the issues that people tend to look at and say, aha, you're being... No. The price of producing a barrel of oil from a field which is 2 years old and the price of producing oil from a field which is 20 years old are different.
Okay. Still going back to that question. Would you say Shell gave back to Nigeria in a commensurate manner?
Yes, absolutely.
But it would seem, you know, as time passed by, there was a reduction. And there was a watered down, a diluted version of the CSR that they were giving back to Nigeria.
The biggest headache we had was that people's aspirations and what people want and thought you could give them increased tremendously, because I dare say when they see the money that is moving around, you don't understand that a large part of it goes back to the government, and you should really depend on your government to do many of the things that you are asking companies to do for.
Do you think this exit of some of these foreign oil companies, do you think is premature, or would you also align with the argument that, well, Nigeria is old enough to stand on its own?
I believe Nigeria has the wherewithal to stand and do these things on their own. I also believe that we should actually have a situation where we have the best of the both worlds. You have the IOCs aligned with Nigerian companies to produce. Why do I say that? The oil and gas industry is extremely competitive, and you need to learn from many others. I didn't complete my story of my experience with you. I also worked, apart from working in the Netherlands, I also worked in Australia. I ran an FPSO in Western Australia for 2 years. I was sent there really to try and, because Shell could see movement more into shallow and deep offshore. That's why you have got the Sea Eagle producing, and you also got Bonga. The idea then was that Shell will have more to do, so we need to train more Nigerians to be able to do that. So I went there on the northwest shelf of Australia, based in Perth, and I was there and I run an FPSO. So you can imagine how much it is to people to see a black man suddenly come and said, I'm in command of this ship.
Okay, so speaking about gas, or this gas flaring, you know, for many years, decades actually, when you go by that Warri road, that's from, as if you're going towards the area, that's that area where the gas pipes are, you see a lot of flaring, and it went on for decades. In the 80s, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and all. And you'll be wondering, how can we have that flaring away, just wasting away, when we have the need for it? There is a need for it, a dire need for that gas. What was it that militated against having that channeled, you know, through the kitchens and storerooms of those who really, really need it?
You hit a very important item. When, when oil production started in Nigeria, people actually made plans to address the gas. In 1973, when I landed in Port Harcourt, one of the first jobs I ever had to do was to repair a place where we are supplying associated gas to a generating plant. And then we went on. Before I left there, when I told you I went to Sapele, I had to go and also work on the gas from Afam to feed generators at the Afam power station. So Nigeria built power stations, but oil production, at the beginning, the power stations were consuming most of the gas in the fields immediately close. But when we came out of the Civil War, we built the one at Afam. We also built one at Ughelli. And the one at Ughelli was feeding the original Delta power station, as well as the glass industry. And then we are also feeding small industries in Transamadi, Port Harcourt. Yeah? And we are feeding the few industries that were kicking up then in Ughelli. After the Civil War, Nigeria's oil production boomed. And at that time, everybody was just looking for the oil. And the time we were going to say, put Boni Alaji on stream, the idea was that you should also gather all the associated gas and put it into that system. There was a bit of a separation. The gas in the eastern part of the Niger was deemed to be ready to be put into pipeline and go to Boni. The one in the western was to be put in the pipeline system to go to the rest of the country. By about 1979-80, there was actually a map of where you are going to take gas to every corner of Nigeria. So I go back to my story. We make plans, we don't implement them because we use the money that we should have done for that on other things. So we need Nigeria to massively invest.
Where does the buck stop? You just mentioned now that
at the president's table. Yes, you should come and talk to us, right on the floor. That's why I put that picture out. We went and said the same thing to Buhari in 2015. Look, we need to invest massively.
I would ask you a question which may be a bit uncomfortable, but I needed to ask that question, which is the argument that some of these oil prospectors, energy prospectors, are seemingly briefcase businessmen. They only come to Nigeria, or the ones that are even within Nigeria, they're just there to, like as leeches, to just take as much as they can and not giving back to motherland in that way. Exactly. How do you respond to that?
I fully agree. There are a lot of those people. But it is up to us, caveat emptor, it's up to us as a country to understand the people who are serious and want to invest and want to stay in, compared to the people who come here for the good times. They come, look at all the cases we have talked about, PNID and so on and so on. People who didn't have any idea of what to do. People who come and fraudulently get contracts to do things they don't do. I'll give you the classic example of PNID. When you sign a gas contract anywhere in the world, you sign with the operator to get that supply from a specific field. You don't sign with somebody in the office. You sign with someone who you know is on the asset, who you will bring your banks and whoever it is to confirm that these people have got the resources to meet those demands and to meet these things. These people just created those quangos to be able to be leeches to the Nigerian economy. In the end, what were they looking for? $11 billion. For what? For a piece of paper that somebody went and said, I signed this with you? No. You never sign a contract for supply of gas other than with someone who is there in the field, who is there, and you go and say, okay, the gas will come from here. And we agree where it is going to come from, when it will come, and under what terms would we be moving. There's never any of that. And it was just basically a briefcase, people trying to make money out of the country. There are a lot of them, and we have to be very clear and know the ones that we should listen to and the ones that are not worth our while to waste our time on. But Nigeria requires a lot of investment. And we have the resources. And the climatic conditions now actually should force us to realize that we have to make full use of as much of our resources now, or you'll get to a time when nobody will be really demanding for it.
Looking back to some of the things you have said and the plans that we had at that time, I'm just imagining what Nigeria would have become if those plans were seen to the last letter, you know, in terms of providing gas. Imagine the power of gas today in our present reality. Gas for powering cars, gas for powering our lights, our bulbs, gas for cooking. I mean, there are different ways we would have used this gas that we won't even need to be looking outside for any kind of help or assistance.
Let me tell you something which will make you really feel the frustration. By the time NNPC and GC built the Escravos Lagos pipeline system, they actually made gas stations to put CNG. And we're trying to convince the likes of Ikene Dilishuku, Guo Motors. Look, convert your buses to CNG. We have got stations along the way, all the way to Onitsha and back. Let's try that first.
This was how long ago?
1993. I refused. And nobody was interested.
But you know, some people also exercise this fear of, you know, the environment where we are, where sometimes people are careless and reckless, and could amount to losing lives in their numbers. You know, there's also that agitation, that fear that are we really ripe for it in the way that, you know, this is done in other parts of the world?
Yes, yes, we can grow. Look, Nigerians are very well-endowed people, and I believe if we do things correctly, we will have all it takes to obey and follow these rules.
On a final note on that gas thing, let's, you know, because we have other areas that we need to look into, and of course time is not our friend. Now, we have marshaled out some of the things that needs to be done, or we've opened up areas or problems. Now is the time for solution.
Yes.
From your experience and with, you know, your wealth of experience, what do you think we need to do differently? You know what we're doing now, and you know what we could do differently. What do you think we need to do differently to change the narrative in such a way that, you know, this Nigerian gas, as we have it, is a natural resource. We're blessed with it. How can we, you know, leverage such that the average Nigerian out there can be a beneficiary?
Thank you very much. It's a very deep question. We tend in Nigeria to think that if we are going to do this, then we have to do it something big and so on. No. We should go back to basics. Look, you are producing oil from that place and there is gas. It's not a question of that I'm going to sell that fly aside to somebody. No, you are going to bring that gas and deliver it to me here. Okay? Where I put a pipeline. If you need help to that investment, I will help you and you will pay me back over time. If you need to bring someone who you think can do it better, you do it. But this is the timeline to do it. That will solve all this problem of the flares all over the place you mentioned. We have tended to be very casual with time. No, you need to sit down with people. If he says it will take him 5 years, okay, in 5 years you bring it to me, no questions asked, and no drop. If you say you can do it faster, yes, but if you don't start doing it, this is the penalty you will pay. Then people will sit up and do these things.
There is no doubt that the oil and gas sector has major challenges. The question I would like to put to you now is it a function of corruption? Is it a function of our orientation? Or is it a function of providing the enabling environment for us to thrive as an oil-producing nation?
Okay. There are two issues. I don't think it is anything difficult. If you are going to look at it objectively as an investment that needs to go and make the conditions right for them to work, all these things will disappear. So you need to create the right attitude and the right aptitude on how to do these things. Stop them and us. No, we have a business to do jointly. How can we do it? And take personal greed off it. People who want to invest in oil industry would consider going elsewhere rather than to Nigeria because they think we have got too many things. They think we have too many community issues, we have too much government interference, our regulators are interfering into everything. And above all, when you want to produce, you have to go and get a quota of what to produce because you say that we have to limit our production to suit certain things. So people tend to weigh those things before they come in. And that's what allows what you said, briefcase people who just want to make money, come in, make promises, come out and say that they have money to do this, they have money to do that, but you actually never see anything.
So what would be your recommendation? Because you just mentioned that some prospective investors are worried about the conditions.
Yes.
that is tied around doing business in Nigeria, particularly in the oil and gas sector. So in your own opinion, do you think there should be liberalization of that whole sector?
You see, we should liberalize, and we should let it be a business run on the same basis as other business. If the government has a share, they adopt. When you've got a share in a bank, you don't actually go and insist that when the bank is going to buy a chair, you must go to this and this and this. No, the bank people go and buy a chair and sit on it. You don't do that in the oil and gas industry. If you are going to do it as a business, let people be open and create. And let our regulators be enablers rather than policemen.
All right, let's look at the refineries. Did I hear you smile?
Yes, because I'm not.
Did you hear the question? Did I hear you smile? It's not. Did I see you smile? Did I hear you smile?
No, I smile because although I'm not a refining man, I'm also very much interested in refineries. And to be quite honest, at one stage, I actually wanted to bring foreign crude into Nigeria to refine.
Then what happened?
It's still in the paper. Niger produces oil. And here are we wasting money bringing oil from long distance places. Bring Niger oil into Nigeria and refine it in Nigeria. And you will serve both all that hinterland, right from Port Sudan to Senegal. There is no refining. And all those economies would be booming in the next 5 to 10 years because of the move to solid minerals.
Once upon a time, and I say once upon a time, Nigeria not only had the natural resources, but had the processing, ability to push these products out. And things were okay, at least seemingly okay. And it got to a point where now we have the resources, the natural resources, but we don't have the facilities to process it. Now we go out, process it, then sell it back to ourselves.
Yes.
And that in itself, for some people,
not for some people. For anybody who is thinking rightly, it is wrong.
The math just does not add up.
It is wrong.
And the question is, how do we balance this math? How do we balance this equation such that we are able to, put our best foot forward in this oil and gas sector?
You're going back to my original proposition. You must invest at a commensurate pace with what is going on. Why would you let your refineries go down? Look, I was on the board of NNPC in 2012, and we raised that same question. Look, this importation of by 2014, we should stop importing product, whatever you call it. Dr. Tim Okon was the chief economist. We asked him to go and work, and we sat with the minister and said, look, this is nonsense. We should stop. We should stop going and taking budget from the federal government to do this. We should get all our refineries back on stream. Attempts were made, but we never actually got it on. We said, stop all these so-called, you take your crude to be processed in Ivory Coast and then you bring it back. Or you go and give people crude to sell and then they bring you the money as products. No.
It would seem it was cheaper for them to import these things and more lucrative.
People who are making money. People who are making money from it. So we are killing. In fact, one of the things we had argument with right from the beginning was that, why are you going to the federal budget with the subsidy for petrol, but you are not going with the subsidy for kerosene? So it was only that the people were okay, you have to go for yes, but you have to be. Okay, we cannot say stop it, but put a timeline and stop it.
Do we really need the big refineries, or we need, at this point in our lives, or we need the modular refineries?
No. There's need for both. I will not support any big refinery now. Let us get what we have now fully on stream. When we have got what we have on stream, Nigeria would have a processing capacity in excess of 1 million barrels, 1.1. We also have a lot of smaller refineries that will come up. Let them come up. But if anybody still thinks that he will make money in Nigeria by putting a mega refinery, please let him come. The amount of business that Dangote refinery has created is unbelievable. A lot of people don't understand. If you've been to Lekki 5 years ago and you go to Lekki now and see what you have there, you will be amazed. The only advice I would have given Dangote if I was him, yes, I will build 650, but I'll do it in 3 modules so I can do 1, 2, 3 instead of doing 1. That's what gave a lot of the problems that they are now facing. But they're coming out of it. The biggest headache is, are we ready to handle that? Or do they have to export it? Because while we have concentrated in building the refineries, we seem to have forgotten the distributive aspect. That's what I was going to mention. We should go and repair them so that tankers don't have to go and queue up for 3 days in Lagos or for 10 days in Port Harcourt. Have you seen the Port Harcourt to One Road, what it is now? It takes you 4 hours to do 15 kilometers.
It brings me to the next question. You know, earlier on you talked about exploring and just keep exploring, looking for oil in places and all of that. In the past, and not too distant a past, the government went in the north to go explore, and many people kicked against it and said they're looking in the wrong direction, that they're wasting money exploring in places they have no business exploring. What would be your reaction to that?
I think that was very naive. You explore where you think you will get reserves that will allow you to.
What are the indicators to that effect?
The formations and the geological map shows that you can look for oil in more places. If you remember, the governor of Niger State at one time said you can go and see the in the state. So let us at least prove that those things exist. And that branch actually goes all the way into the Sokoto River again. So it is all over the place.
There's a justification for the exploration of using the amount of resources that is deployed into it?
What you should do these things wisely. Don't put in too much money into things until you do the correct thing. You do a lot of surveys to know area you should not bother, an area you should. So it should be wise. But the important thing is to recognize that whatever you are going to do, you should make full use of available knowledge and technology. Don't just jump in because it is politically wise to do it. No. Go and do it wisely. Go and do it rightly. You've got also the availability to actually enhance our productive capacity in the country and change the quality of life for everybody.
And speaking of quality of life, I mean, over time, there's been this speculation that oil will become obsolete and everybody is tuning on to green energy, cleaning up the environment and all. And with what we're practicing now, at some point we will need to catch up with the trends.
Yes.
So what would be your response? How do you think we should go about it such that we align with the global expectation in terms of keeping the world clean and safe?
Yeah, you should use your God-given resources in oil and gas now to generate revenue to build the infrastructure and what you need to survive in the future world. That's why you hear me say you need a 50-year plan.
Projection. And
then you also map what you want to achieve. Everybody must eat. Yeah, this is the first law of existence. Must have shelter. Must have something to do. What are you going to do? This is what makes Nigerians Japa out of here to other places. You can build the same thing here if you really invest properly. So bring in the resources you need, make use of the knowledge you have abundantly in country, build the infrastructure and give people the thing to do. That is what will make life better for everybody. If you look at what the Minister of Works is now saying, which I go along with, let's start building roads out of concrete. Why should I have to wait until I buy asphalt from outside when I've got millions of tons of concrete in this country that can come in and help us make it. And then when I make these roads, they last far longer than the ones. It takes a bit of time, but you also need the steel to build it, so I don't have to import the steel. All the people who are taking ores now should actually set up processing plants in Nigeria and export the finished product so that we too can make something out of it.
So we've looked at the economics of this oil and gas sector. Let's go into the political aspect of it. And, you know, because of time, we may not really be able to touch on all the places one would want to touch. However, one would want to ask you this question. Based on your years and wealth of experience in the oil and gas sector and the role you play, it's not enough for you to be there for 100 years and then you're not, you don't have that, you know, significant role in that regard. Now, the question therefore would be, and this is against the argument that has come up in the past, that yes, the oil and gas sector is polarized by people who have no business being there. And you're looking at, okay, we have the Niger Delta region. These are the producers of this oil. It comes from their soil. But it would seem over the years, a region that is not in the business of oil producing seems to have more say and sometimes dominance over the oil and gas sector beyond and above those oil producing states. How would you respond to that?
I understand what you're saying, and there are a lot of sentimental feelings on it. But you also have to go through what the oil industry has been through. When the oil industry started, it was largely people by expatriates and people from the vicinity. But you also have to remember that after some time, the attraction was for a much larger section of the country now come in and are interested in moving in. And when government also came in, it increased the level and the number of people. One of the biggest things that has happened in the oil industry was actually the movement that led to people having, how do I call it, a natural entitlement for what they believe is their own birthright. Which there's nothing wrong with it. But also in order to address that, government tried to make laws that will show balance for what they have done, so that people will be able to say that, yes, this is, whoever moves around in these things is open in the government. And I believe the oil companies are still, to a large extent, doing that. You become whatever you become if you have gone through the ranks of the company and you have performed, not because you come from a certain part of the country, wherever it is. I believe that's what the oil companies do. So there are CSR projects, there are CSR projects. What is needed? The money that goes directly into the government through the derivation fund, through NDDC, we should also find a better way to domicile it in the communities and make sure it is applied effectively. None of them in the states have got a plan like I was saying. It's not only Nigeria at the top level that should do a 50-year plan, but every local government should have its own 50-year plan, what you are going to do. But you see, when you look at the state level, it is not only the village that is producing, but all the people around should also benefit. So you need to have a structure which allows the most important thing, that when someone comes to invest in your community, you should be to welcome him and give him freedom to work with you. Not to keep imposing, throwing things at him and blocking him, which is normally what happens. So you should work out something that he feels free and comfortable to come and work, and at the same time, you now can convince each other to do all the developments you work. So my hope is that the aspirations of the people in the oil production area should be addressed and should be made to come out. And the money that has been destined to go there should be allowed to reach what it is supposed to reach and not be sequestered along the way into all sorts of grandiose projects.
So, on a final note, I mean, we've gone back into the past, we've reflected on our present situation, and in projecting into the future, which is what this whole program is about, tell us where you see Nigeria in the next 50 years, because you've talked about projection planning, 20-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 50-year plan. Where do you see Nigeria go in the nearest future and all of that?
It's a question of time. We'll move on, and Nigeria should understand its place and will be able to have the infrastructure that will provide for the quality of life and keep everybody busy. We have sufficient things to do to export. We run from the humid forest to the desert. And in all these, there are different things you can do, whether it is mining, whether it is agriculture, whether it is tourism, whether it is even fashion. It's only now that we are discovering what we can do. And all the moribund industry that we have allowed to die should come back. People tend to forget that we have textiles, we are assembling cars. We should be, when we get the steel plants back on stream, we should be having all those inside, and we start making the car components ourselves. We should be making all the rail line that we need to move the goods we go. With your steel plant back on stream, you will not import anything. You will build it from what you have here and export it. You need the cooperation of others in this world to be able to do that, because they may have some better knowledge in some place. But you should never give up and say, oh, we can't do it. No. You should be in a position to say, we will create the right environment for our people to have a good life, and we should be able to also help our neighbors to be that, because that's actually what will give us the joy of being able to say, all the people who have Jaffa start to come back. What keeps Philippines alive? The income from people who have gone. The income of those who should come and invest in Nigeria, and that will help bring them back into Nigeria and into a greater nation than what we have. I believe, seriously, the Ministry of Planning should make what I said serious target. But we need to convince people that if you don't plan, then you have planned to fail.
All right. And I'm sure the right people are hearing you, and even the spectators are listening. And so hopefully we'll take this country to where it needs to be, where it'll be a country for all. And everybody will carry it along in that way. And so with that, we want to say thank you so much for being part of Conversation with History. I'm sure there's so much to learn from this conversation.
I very much like the program. I've seen many episodes. I find them very interesting. I'm a fan of NTA, actually. I like the change in program that you're bringing in now, and I hope a lot more people will see it, rather than think that NTA is not where they should be on, they should be on other. No, there are many programs that people should look, and I think it should be marketed well. The program brings into contact and brings to light a lot of things that a lot of people actually never had an opportunity to know. They are not in the written documentation where people, and even if they are kept in musty books at universities and other places. But you need to be able to direct people and tell them, look at these things, and look at them from a totally different perspective. Remember, I was talking about your conversation with IBM Haruna. They are the people who organized FESTAC. Did you see what they did with the presidents of 15 countries? They put them in one bus